Now go on to the report from Iron Mountain. These are all the old things you need to hear about. This was a booklet released in 1967, but started in 1963. And I first heard about it in the late 90s when I watched Colonel Fletcher Prouty. This was the original for the character X in JFK, the movie, financed by Arnold Milchan. And JFK with Oliver Stone. Now, he was the liaison. Let's read. Colonel Prouty was the model for the Man X in the Oliver Stone film JFK. Colonel Fletcher Prouty answered an email from this site while he was alive. Blah, blah, blah. I can't believe this is still up. Colonel Prouty spent 9 of his 23-year military career in the Pentagon, 2 years with the Secretary of Defense, 2 years with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and 5 years with Headquarters U.S. Air Force. In 1955, he was appointed the first focal point officer between the CIA and the Air Force for clandestine operations per National Security Council Directive 5412. He was briefing officer for the Secretary of Defense and for the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. At times, he would be called to meet with Alan Dulles and John Foster Dulles at their home on the highly classified business. He was assigned to attend MK Ultra meetings. In his capacity, Colonel Prouty would be at the nerve center of the military-industrial complex at a time unequaled in American history. He has written on these subjects about the JFK assassination, the Cold War period and Vietnamese warfare, and the existence of a, quote, secret team. He backs up his work with seldom seen or mentioned official documents, some never seen before. Fletcher Prouty offers a rare glimpse of the power elite as described by Buckmaster Fuller, or the higher cable as Winston Churchill referred to them, and how they really operate. Those who have not been in a position to witness such events as these from the inside would not understand how invisible but ultimately effective they are and their power structures are. I urge you to go and catch up on Colonel Fletcher Prouty, one of the originals. One of the originals. He wrote about the report from Iron Mountain. That's where I first heard about it and read about it before I even really got into Alex Jones. It was published in 1967, and basically what the book says is we still need wars. This is the function of war. And it was actually written as a parody document, but it was taken very seriously. As Fletcher Prouty said, he was there in the Pentagon when that came out, and they said they bought 5,000 copies and gave them out for free. So anyway, here's the report from Iron Mountain on the possibility and desirability of peace. So I want to put this in the context of everything you see happening now. The return of the Cold War 2.0, the War Powers Act, maintaining control of populations. First it was the Soviet Union, then they went into terrorism, they got all the crowd control technology in. Who benefited? Israel was waiting to benefit in the billions. COVID comes along, more crowd control. There's Israel benefiting in the billions. I mean, it's just all about furnishing and getting Israel nice and comfy. We'll go to page 5 and we'll read part of this introduction. That is the gift of what they say. This is the introduction to the book. Behind their qualified academic language runs this general argument. War fills certain functions essential to the stability of our society. Until other ways of filling them are developed, the war system must be maintained and improved in effectiveness. It is not surprising that the group in its letter of transmittal did not choose to justify its work to, quote, the lay reader, unexposed to the exigencies of higher political or military responsibility. Its report was addressed deliberately to unnamed government administrators of high rank. It assumed considerable political sophistication from this select audience. To the general reader, therefore, the substance of the document may be even more unsettling than its conclusions. He may not be prepared for some of its assumptions. For instance, the most medical advances are viewed more as problems than as progress, or that poverty is necessary and desirable, public postures by politicians to the contrary notwithstanding, or that standing armies are, among other things, social welfare institutions in exactly the same sense as are old people's homes and mental hospitals. It may strike him as odd to find that the probability explanation of, quote, flying saucer incidents disposed of en passant in less than a sentence, he said, dealt with very lightly, in other words. He may be less surprised to find that the space program and the controversial anti-missile, missile and fallout shelter programs are understood to have the spending of vast sums of money, not the advancement of science or national defence, as their principal goal, and to learn that military draft policies are only remotely concerned with defence. He may be offended to find the organised repression of minority groups and even the re-establishment of slavery seriously and on the whole favourably discussed as possible aspects of a world peace. Hello, the Great Reset. He is not likely to take kindly to the notion of the deliberate intensification of air and water pollution as part of a program leading to peace. This was the Great Reset was written about in 1967. Released in 1967. Even when the reason for considering it is made clear that a world without war will have to turn sooner rather than later to universal test tube procreation will be less disturbing, if no more appealing. But few readers will be taken aback, at least by a few lines in the report's conclusions, repeated in its formal recommendations that suggest that the long-range planning, quote, the long-range planning and budgeting of the optimum number of lives to be destroyed annually in overt warfare is high on the group's list of priorities for government actions. So I want you to imagine how long ago this was written. And if we go to the summary of the report, the links are below. This is a summary of what it talked about. Oh, where is the summary? Let's read it right here. And it's just everything we're looking at today, including UFOs and aliens. The heavily footnoted report concluded that peace was not in the interest of a stable society, that even if lasting peace could be achieved, it would almost certainly not be in the best interest of society to achieve it. War was a part of the economy. Therefore, it was necessary to conceive a state of war for a stable economy. The government, the group theorised, would not exist without war, and nation-states existed in order to wage war. War served the vital function of diverting collective aggression. They recommended credible substitutes and paying a blood price to emulate the economic functions of war. Prospective governments devised alternatives to war included reports of alien life forms. Ladies and gentlemen, this is 1967. The reintroduction of a euphemised form of slavery, quote, consistent with modern technology and digital and political processes, and one deemed particularly promising in gaining the attention of the malleable masses, the threat of gross pollution of the environment.
Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
There you go, ladies and gents. 1967. Laid it all out for you, but we all forgot about it because we were busy having bullshit New Age stars bring us this stuff. But we're gonna remind you. We're gonna keep reminding you. We'll remind you of Anthony Sutton, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler. It was all about technology transfer. It's all about Lord Jacob Rothschild building his trading guild, his planetary trading guild. Now he's ready to shift over the next decade, building up to Agenda 2030, shift the US high industrial base and the ability to make the machines that make the machines. You've got to have a very large industrial base to do that. Israel does not have it. That's what it's trying to get. And when it does, the gloves will come off. Things may well have been very different had Steve Bannon stayed on. You don't have to like his politics. He was a genius and he knew exactly what he was doing. Shall I remind you of what Steve Bannon used to say every day for months?
And you worship at the foot of a totalitarian dictatorship. There is blood on your hands, and trust me, to my last breath, we're going to hunt you down and expose it all, and we're starting with Kissinger.
I had to go around to people. Is anyone else noticing this from Bannon? It was hardcore. Then he's arrested after Kissinger turns up in the White House and he's indicted on the bullshit charges. Look, Steve Bannon is my favourite guy, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend. He knows exactly what's going on. The Office of Naval Intelligence knows exactly what's going on. So Trump's done his job. Now it's about consolidating back into North America, South America, the energizing. I mean, why else do you think these people, Biden, some of the stuff coming out of Biden and his people's mouth, we're going to, go after people, we're going to not let them have jobs. It's a radicalization program. They're trying to radicalize the same way Israel was radicalizing Islam, funding these lunatic groups with their mates in Saudi. You understand how this works? And now they're going to energize and radicalize the United States. It is the Ode Yunon plan, come to the United States. That is what is going on. Donald Trump doesn't have to know what's going on. It's about destabilized perception. It's about increasing anxiety. You'll see one thing and you go, oh, I think I get this now. Then you'll see another thing and you go, oh, I'm confused. They're just going to keep feeding you this shit until you learn to switch off and understand the big picture, the grand chessboard that's going on. Rothschild, East India Trading Company, Soros and Kissinger, all those banking arms through Europe down into the Bank of Swiss International Settlements, the Swiss Bank of International Settlements, into Wall Street, into privatized army intelligence, the military industrial